In 1628, the most powerful warship in the world set out on her maiden voyage before a cheering crowd. She sailed for 20 minutes, traveled barely a mile, and sank in full view of the king's assembled guests. It should have been the end of the story. Instead, 333 years later, she rose from the water almost perfectly intact. This is the Vasa. Sweden in the 1620s was a small country with enormous ambitions. King Gustavus Adolphus, the Lion of the North, was carving out a Baltic empire, and empires need navies. He ordered a warship beyond anything Sweden had built, 64 bronze cannons, a hull blazing with hundreds of painted sculptures, a floating declaration that Sweden had arrived. But the Vasa was doomed on the drawing board. The king demanded changes mid-construction, the master shipwright died before she was finished, and the final vessel rose too tall and too narrow, her heavy guns sitting high above a shallow hull. Weeks before launch, 30 sailors ran side to side across her deck in a stability test. She rocked so violently the test was stopped. The admiral watching said nothing to the king, who was abroad at war, demanding his ship. On the 10th of August, 1628, Stockholm's waterfront filled with spectators. The Vasa fired a salute, caught the wind, and heeled. She righted herself once. A second gust pushed her over until water poured through the open gun ports, and the pride of the Swedish Navy went down less than a mile into her first voyage, taking around 30 people with her. The inquest that followed is a masterpiece of blame evaporating upward. The captain proved the crew was sober and the guns properly lashed. The builders proved they had followed the approved dimensions, and who had approved those dimensions? The king himself. The tribunal quietly convicted no one, and the Vasa was left to the darkness of Stockholm harbour. She was not quite forgotten. In the 1660s, salvage divers descended 30 meters in a primitive diving bell, standing in trapped air, in freezing black water, and somehow wrenched more than 50 of her bronze cannons out through the gun ports. It remains one of the most astonishing feats of pre-modern diving. Then the Vasa slipped from memory for nearly 3 centuries. Enter Anders Franzén, an amateur naval historian with an obsession and a homemade core sampler. He knew something crucial. The Baltic is too brackish for the shipworm that devours wooden wrecks everywhere else on Earth. In 1956, his sampler came up from Stockholm's seabed with a plug of blackened oak. The Vasa was still down there, all of her. What followed took 5 years. Divers spent thousands of hours tunneling passages under the hull through mud, in zero visibility, to sling steel cables beneath her. Then, on the 24th of April 1961, before live television cameras, the Vasa's black hull broke the surface, the first time she had seen the sky since the year Galileo was still under Rome's suspicion. What came up was a time capsule without equal, 95% original, with thousands of artifacts sealed inside, sailors' chests, clothing, coins, the oldest identified sails in existence, and the remains of at least 15 of her dead. Conservators sprayed the hull with preservative for 17 straight years. Today she fills a purpose-built museum, the only nearly intact 17th century ship on Earth. Here is the beautiful irony. Every warship that worked ended up shot to pieces, rebuilt, scrapped, or rotted. The Vasa survives precisely because she failed instantly, completely, and in water that would not let her decay. Her catastrophe became the greatest gift maritime history ever received. So the question she still asks every deadline-driven project today: who on your team is brave enough to tell the king? Subscribe for more history that refused to stay buried.